What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And today I'm going to be doing my second to last re-review for the MCU before Endgame. Endgame comes out tonight on Thursday. But I won't be seeing it until Sunday. So today on Thursday I'm going to be doing my Age of Ultron re-review, and then hopefully on Friday I'll do my Infinity War re-review, because I did do a review on it last year, but I want to give you my revised thoughts. Not that they would have changed, I still think that's an awesome movie. But we're going to be talking about Age of Ultron, and I've been saying in the past that I hate this movie. Have my opinions changed, and I think it's as bad as I remember. Yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know, it's not special. It's not a very special movie. And it's just really bland, and it's not interesting to watch. Like, it doesn't have, when I watch Infinity War, the first Avengers, I get excited while I'm watching it, because, I'm just like, I love watching these movies. These are really, I get that feeling of these are well thought, put together movies. And I'm excited to be watching them right now. And with Age of Ultron, I just don't get that feeling. I don't get that excitement while watching it. Because I just feel not bored, but just not interested. Because none of these characters really have a motivation or a character arc. They're all just there to be along for the ride and to save the world. Like, Thor just randomly goes to the exposition pool at one point. Captain America doesn't do anything. He has no character arc. Tony Stark is completely out of character. Like, there's this one part where the rest of the Avengers are like, Tony, you're an idiot. You created a killer robot. And he's like, it's like so out of character. He just starts laughing. And then Thor's like, you think this is funny? It's like so out of character. It's like, why is he laughing about a robot that's trying to destroy the world? It's so stupid and out of character. It's like they're all just there for no reason, just to be along for the ride. Hawkeye is the only character in this movie that has a real arc, and he's involved in one of the best scenes in the movie, which we'll get to later. But I'm just going to go through my notes that I wrote down, and the first of which is the movie has really lazy exposition scenes and incredibly obvious setup shots. And they're cool shots, but they just set up things completely obviously. The movie also, at the beginning I was noticing, and kind of throughout the movie, has a really weird look to it. Like, it looks weird. Like, some of the other MCU movies look more polished, and the first Avengers, granted, had like this weird TV show look. Like, it looked not like a big budget movie. But with this movie, it just looks really weird. Like, it doesn't look as weird and oversaturated as Justice League, where Justice League had that really overprocessed, like, gross look. It doesn't have that, but like, every time I see a shot of Tony inside the suit, I don't know why, it just looks really odd to me. Because especially with how good it looked in like the first two Iron Mans, or in like the Iron Man trilogy, it just was really jarring to like look at the inside of his helmet. And even in the first Avengers, like in this movie, well, actually, it was at the end of Iron Man 3 as well, where it started to look really weird. And I don't know, it's just my opinion, but that was really noticeable to me. But yeah, it has incredibly like lazy exposition. Like, there's a scene at the beginning where they have gone to the Hydra base, and Marie Hill's talking to Steve Rogers or Captain America in a hallway, and then he's like, okay, so what are the twins about? And she's like, she's weird and he's fast and she's weird, and we're gonna walk in a hallway and I'm gonna deliver you exposition while looking at a screen. It's like the most lazy form of exposition ever. And it's the same with like the rest of the movie. Thor goes to the pool of lightning or whatever to see his dream vision again, so he gets foreshadowing for Ragnarok and Infinity War. It's like incredibly lazy. And then like the middle of the movie when they go to Hawkeye's farm, like the only purpose of that is to like have characters, like it's a scene after scene of like characters talking about their backstories. You have like first scene is with Hawkeye and his wife, which I actually like. Then you have this incredibly awkward scene where Bruce Banner walks out of the shower and Black Widow's like, I should have joined you. It's like the most incredibly awkward moment ever. It gets better after that. It's not necessarily a bad scene, but it's incredibly bad exposition. And then you get a scene of, like, Tony Stark and Steve Rogers dramatically chopping wood. And it's just, like, it's a setup for Civil War. It's like the movie is just set up based on setups. And the movie has no theme of its own. And it's like, yeah, so, and then there's, like, some really cool shots, but this movie has a really bad case of, like, foreshadowing things in an incredibly obvious way, and my dad said maybe it's just because you've seen it quite a few times. I haven't seen it that many times. I've seen it like 3 times, but that's true. But he says maybe it's because you've seen it a few times that you know what the things are, but it's like, Infinity War had a very subtle way of setting it up, and it's a line that I didn't even remember when I watched it. But when Black Panther goes up to Proxima Midnight in Cullop City, and he says, "Thanos will have nothing but dust and blood," and the movie's shocking ending, all you can think about when it ends is that. But then when you think back to it, you remember that line, and you remember how that was such cool foreshadowing because you didn't expect the snap to happen. So it's really cool. But with this movie, it's like, okay, you have a shot at the beginning of it shows all these Ultron or all these like Iron Legion drones being built, and then it pans up through the floor and it shows Tony walking. And it's like, it's a cool shot, but it's obvious foreshadowing that later on Ultron is going to get a body in one of those robots. And then later on, when they're fighting in Sokovia, and then the cops are shooting at the robots, and then one of them accidentally shoots Quicksilver, and he's like, hey, foreshadowing that he's gonna die. It's like, it's incredibly obvious foreshadowing, as opposed to like Infinity War, where it did it in a really clever way. So that's really annoying, and it's like, the movie can be incredibly boring at points, and it's the cleverness of the humor is gone. I didn't really laugh much at all. Like, I laughed at one line. Like, I'm trying to remember what I laughed at. I laughed at a lot of Hawkeye's lines, because Hawkeye's genuinely funny. Like, I love when he's like, I don't know, the last time I saw him, Ultron was sitting on him. I missed the guy already. And like, at the end, when Quicksilver runs away, like, that's a really funny little moment. But, like, and then I laughed at one part where, like, they're checking through all the files to see where Ultron might be going, and then there's, like, all these associates of Baron Strucker, and then Banner's like, oh, these guys are all horrible, or something. Like that's kind of funny, but, like, nothing Ultron ever said made me laugh. They're all just making recycled jokes, and that's the thing. I think that's what they were trying to do with this movie, is the first Avengers, the main highlight of that film was seeing them all come together and have this witty dialogue. And people say that they like that this movie brought in more of that, but I actually personally dislike that, because it feels like recycled jokes. Like, at the beginning of the movie, there's a scene when they're in the snowy forest, the Hydra forest, or whatever the heck, and then there's like, all these tanks are coming, and all these army soldiers, the Hydra soldiers, and then Thor's like, they're lining up, and Cap's like, well, they're excited, and then he smashes his hammer on the shield, and then they all get knocked over. Like, it's incredible, like, it's an incredibly lazy reuse of a joke. Like, it's like, okay, that's the same thing in the first one when we found out that the shield was stronger than the hammer, but now they're using it as a joke. Like, they're recycling things, and the cleverness of the humor is gone. Like, they're all making the same jokes. And, you know, like, the Captain America language gag is actually kind of funny, but I just, like I'm saying, I never really laughed out loud through it. Like, I laughed a lot at Infinity War and the first Avengers, because the clever humor is gone. I think that's because in Infinity War, they brought in the Guardians, and they're obviously known as comedic characters, and now bringing in those characters, they got more opportunities to have comedic moments and have more interactions, because we have new characters to put into these scenarios. That's why I think this movie is so bland, is because they're just recycling everything. And then, like, there's this scene, like, Bruce Banner is, like I say, all these characters are mostly out of character, and have, like, no, like, reason to be agreeing with what's going on. So, this is another thing I don't like about the movie, is so Tony's like, hey, we should create this Ultron program so that we can, like, save the Earth, and then Bruce Banner says, another obvious instance of foreshadowing is he says, but then the only threat to the Earth would be humans. That's Ultron's motivation. Great foreshadowing. But it's also just like, Bruce is like, Tony's like, hey, we should do this, and Bruce is like, no, 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 and then Tony's just like, peace in our time, and then he's like, okay, sure, I'll do it. What? He just does it out of the blue. He just decides to help Tony build the Ultron project. It's so out of character, and it's like, because like for the last 2 minutes, he's just been saying, no, 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 and then he's just suddenly like, okay, and then they have a montage of like them building, and there's like the do music, the do, or whatever the heck. Like, they do that in a lot of movies. It's kind of a cliche at this point, but yeah, it's just like an incredible, like, it's an incredibly out of character moment for him. And it's another instance where there's some really interesting lines, but they go nowhere. It's like, okay, so there's a scene where Wanda or Scarlet Witch is talking to Captain America after they've saved the train in, like, Hong Kong or whatever, and then she's like, Stark is insane. He'll do whatever it saves to, and Steve's like, no, Tony's not insane. And then she says, Ultron can't tell the difference between saving the world and destroying it. Where do you think he gets that from? And it's a really interesting, thought-provoking line, but it goes nowhere because Tony's plan was right the whole time. It succeeded. He created Vision, and Vision was like the perfect version of Ultron. He was a good guy, and it's like, okay, so like, I just don't understand that. It's like, why, I don't know, it just bothers me. Um, yeah, and it's like, there's no stakes. That's the thing. It's like, you may say, oh, well, Quicksilver dies, so there's stakes there. But yeah, and it's like, Tony, like, they're like, oh my god, Tony's wrong, and I'm like, yeah, I agree with all of you. I agree that Tony should not be doing this right now. But Bruce just, like, and once again, Bruce is like, I don't think we should do it, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then the rest of them show up, and then Quicksilver stops him, like, good job, buddy, we shouldn't be doing this. And then Thor comes out of nowhere. Like, the last time we saw him, he was going crazy in the exposition pool. That scene made no sense. He leaves the farm, goes to, like, Eric Selvig from the Thor movies, and he's like, hey, let's go to this, like, pool, and he says, I need you. And apparently in a deleted scene, the Fates are talking to him about the future, and Eric Selvig is writing down notes. But that's not in the movie. So in the movie, there's no purpose for him to be there. It's just him having a vision about Infinity Stones, and they don't see him until once he shows up and, like, charges the casket that all, like, Vision is in so that he can, like, come alive. And it's like, so Tony was right the whole time. His plan was right. And it's like, okay, this interesting thought-provoking line of Ultron doesn't know the difference between destroying the Earth and saving it. Where do you think he gets that from? Has no meaning now because Tony was right the whole time. You know, it's just like, there's no consequences. And it's like, you may be like, oh, Quicksilver dies. That's the consequence. The science of that makes no sense. Ultron's shooting everybody. He shoots past Black Widow and Hulk. Hulk survives, that's fine. But how did Black Widow not get shot? Then they shoot past Thor and Captain America. Somehow, I guess you could say Cap has a shield, but it literally shows a shot of, like, a cop getting mowed down. And it's like Hawkeye sees it coming, and he kind of hides behind this car with this kid in his arms, and he just kind of is ready to take it on. But, like, he's not, like, the car isn't gonna protect him, and Quicksilver runs in, and then he, like, blocks the bullets, but, like, he's overhead them, so, like, he would just shoot them as well as Quicksilver. Like, the science of that makes no sense, but I do like the, you didn't see that coming, and he dies. Like, that's kind of sad. And it goes back to, the whole, you didn't see that coming, and they keep saying that to each other. It's a good kind of, I guess, character moment for the both of them, and that's why Hawkeye's the best character in this movie. He actually has a character arc. And I like when they go to his farm, and it can be a little pushy. Like, you could say it's kind of a little bit too far. Like, they're like, here, feel for him, because he has a family, and he's a normal guy. But I like when he's like, there's some kids that need some sense talked into them, and she's like, you're gonna do it. That's his wife talking to him. And then in the end, he's the one who gives the motivational speech for Scarlet Witch to become an Avenger. That is a character arc. He actually has a character arc. Unlike basically everyone else in this movie. Like, he has a character arc. And he goes from one place to another throughout the entire film. It's actually a character arc, which I appreciate. That's why he's probably the best character in this movie. He has a motivation, he has a character arc, unlike basically everyone else. Then, like, at the beginning, when, like, Ultron is talking to Jarvis, and it's like, the setup for Ultron was really cool, and I don't necessarily hate Ultron as much as I used to. But he's not special. He's just not a special character. He just jokes around like Tony Stark, and people are like, he should have been cold and calculating. They could have made the jokes work, but they aren't really funny. It's just like, I can't physically throw up in my mouth. It's just like all these stupid jokes. And it doesn't really, they're not really funny, and they don't, like, people are saying, oh, they were trying to, like, do Loki all over again. I don't know. It's like, they could have made the jokes work, and James Spader could have done a creepy Ultron. Because, like, in the trailer, there are some lines in the trailer that weren't even put in the movie. The trailer was so good, but then in the movie, he's just like, there are these lines in the trailer where he's like, do you want to see the world? I want to see everyone screaming, or something. Like, there's these cool lines, but, like, most of the scary lines are, like, from the beginning, because the setup when he's, like, wakes up, it cuts to black, and you just hear him, like, what? Where am I? And it just shows him, like, looking through all the files, and Jarvis is there and talking to him. That's a creepy scene. He's looking through all the files, and the motivation's there. and when he walks out, that's scary. So there are scary scenes with him, but then after that, he just becomes like a jokey character, and it's just not good. Like, he's just not a good character. You know, it's kind of sad, but it's not well done. You know, he's not a bad villain, but he's not very good either. He's just kind of there. Like, there are much better villains, like Killmonger, Thanos, like all these other characters, but you know, whatever. He's just not very good. And then like Jarvis and his like consciousnesses connect. So like Tony has like a hologram of their consciousnesses, of both their consciousness, and then he's like talking to Jarvis, and then he's like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna like kill you or whatever," and he's like, "I had to kill the other guy." So then he like shoots his little beams, and their like brain consciousnesses connect. It's so weird. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, but aren't those just holograms? Like, the way they visualize it makes no sense. Like, the visualization of it makes no sense. I do not understand that at all. And then, like, Bruce and Natasha's romance doesn't really work that well. Like, their chemistry in the first Avengers film, I really bought. Because, you know, like, from the very beginning, from the first scene when like she goes out to recruit him, and they bring that back in this movie. Like, that's a really interesting scene, and from then on, I bought the chemistry between them. But like in this movie, the chemistry just doesn't really work. Like, it just doesn't feel natural. It feels forced, and the scene is incredibly awkward where he comes out of the shower, and like after that scene is okay. But once again, it's lazy exposition where she says how she can't have children. And it's like, oh my god, like it's just a really lazy exposition dump scene. Yeah, I already talked about how Hawkeye is the best, Oh yeah, and, okay, so I'm looking through my notes here. Another really stupid moment is where Quicksilver and Wanda have a very sudden character change. So, Ultron goes and he makes a vibranium body for himself, and then, like, he makes a vibranium body for himself, and then, like, he just, like, Scarlet Witch looks into his mind, and then she sees destruction, and then she's like, "Oh my god, you were gonna destroy the Earth, not just the Avengers." No kidding! You didn't think this guy was gonna kill everybody and not just the Avengers? That's so stupid. And then, like, they just randomly show up and help the Avengers. It's like, shouldn't you still be mad at Stark and all these people because they killed your parents? Like, it's so sudden. Like, and then there's one line where Scarlet Witch says, like, "What choice do we have?" So I guess she's saying, what choice do we have? We have to work with them. But, like, she's just buddies with them after that. Like, and then she does have that moment where she's like, "It's all my fault." And then Hawkeye's like, "No, it's your fault. It's everyone's fault. Who cares? If you step out that door, you're an Avenger." You know, so it's like, she kind of has a character arc, but not really. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know. She gets better in the other movies, but, like, her accent's very inconsistent, obviously. Yeah, and then, so there's some good ideas. Like, there are some really good ideas, like I said, about Ultron not knowing the difference between destroying the Earth and saving it, and that kind of being reflecting Tony. And then at the end of the movie, there's a really good scene where Ultron is talking to Vision, and it's the last Ultron robot, and he says, like, "The humans are odd, but there's grace in their fate, and I think you miss that. And, it is a pleasure to be among them." And he's, like, talking about how something doesn't have to be beautiful because it lasts. And I think that could have been a part of Ultron's character arc if they just changed something up at the beginning, and then that could have been a running theme. But that's the problem. The other MCU movies, while they may be simple, they have themes. Like Avengers 1, they needed the push. Like, it doesn't have much to it, but there is at least somewhat of a theme. This movie has no running themes. There are good ideas, like the ones I just mentioned, but there's no running themes. But that scene with Vision and Ultron is really beautiful. Like, it's a really nice scene. It's well shot. Like, there's a really nice, like, sunset in the background. It's a really nice scene. It's one of the best scenes in the film, right next to Hawkeye giving Wanda the push to go outside. You know, it's a very good scene. Then, like, there's another thing which is, like, there are no stakes, really. The movie doesn't really have many stakes, and that's kind of a problem with a lot of these films, which is, like, I don't know, a lot of people pick that criticism, but, like, they're like, oh no, we're not gonna be able to get the people off, and then if people die on Earth, and it's like, that could have been a really interesting choice that the Avengers have to make, but they're not willing to. Once again, that goes back to Infinity War later on. They, we don't trade lives. So they're like, are we gonna be able to take the lives up here next to the ones on Earth? And then it's like, no, Nick Fury just flies up in a helicarrier, and he's like, he has some stupid line where he's like, I picked it up from a friend, it's a little dusty, but it'll do. It's like, what? Like, they were destroyed in Age of Ultron. S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, or in Winter Soldier. So basically just undoes Winter Soldier. Like, Winter Soldier is one of the best films in the MCU. But, like, Nick Fury just randomly shows up in the garage and he has his eye patch, and it's like, at the end of Winter Soldier, they made a point of him being underground, and in this movie they still carry that over, but he has his eye patch, and it's like, in that movie you burnt the eye patch and put on sunglasses, so why did you burn the eye patch? Like, was he just like, oh crap, I burnt my eye patch, I better get a new one, you know, like, what happened there? Like, it's just like, and they just have a helicarrier sitting around? Like, did you just build it in Hawkeye's farm garage or whatever? Like, I don't know, it just makes no sense. And then another thing is, like, the music is really weird in this movie. Like, the music is, like, there's, like, the scene where Wanda walks out of the shed or whatever, the building, that's a really good scene. And it's really awesome. Like, it's an inspiring scene, kind of, not really, but it's, like, a really awesome scene where she comes out. But the music is, like, just really bland, like, superhero-esque music that doesn't really have any originality to it. So that kind of takes away from the scene, but, like, the music's really weird, because, like, the theme is composed by Danny Elfman, and he's kind of gone downhill. Like, he composed Justice League, which didn't really have any remarkable pieces except for the Flash's theme, but he did do the old Spider-Man theme, and he did, the 1989 Batman theme, but, like, with this movie, it's a really bland score, and it's not bad. Like, it's a good score, but it's like, dun, 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 and it's not like the original Avengers theme, da, 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 and they play it in the credits, but they don't play it in the movie until, like, the very last scene, and there's some musical connections, like, in the final battle, there are some musical cues from the first Avengers in the Battle of New York, so there are some musical connections, but they're very far and few between, and the music's just kind of bland overall. Like, it's not really remarkable, the score isn't bad, but the main theme is really weird, and it's not the original Avengers theme at all, but I'm glad they brought back Alan Silvestri for Infinity War and Endgame. It's like, the big spin-around shot as well makes no sense. Like, there's this random, like, shot of, like, 1 minute of, like, them just fighting all the robots, and there's no sound. Like, there's no music except for them fighting, and then suddenly, this giant, like, spin-around shot comes out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, wow, it's time for the giant epic shot. Like, they just, like, and then, like, it's really weird. Like, they do these really weird things. Like, Cap spins in the air 3 times, punches a robot with his shield onto the ground, and lands on his feet. It's so weird. And then in another shot, it shows Hawkeye throwing his bow and arrow into the air. Why are you doing that? Are you out of arrows? And then in the next shot, he grabs one by the neck. I'm like, okay, at the speed they're going, how did you grab it by the neck? And number 2, shouldn't they be made of vibranium as well? Is it just Ultron's body that is made of vibranium? Or, like, but they laser him. Like, Ultron or Vision, Thor, and Iron Man all laser him. So they should, like, that shouldn't be able to destroy him. I guess Vision has the Mind Stone, so that's strong enough. I don't know. But Vision in this movie, also, he was a really cool character, and they set him up to be a really interesting character, especially with that very beautiful scene with him and Ultron at the end. But then in the future movies, in Infinity War, he was useless, and then in Civil War, he just became kind of, not cold, but he just became bland. So, you know, also there is, like, one scene where, in the Hulkbuster fight, which is fun, granted, but it doesn't really have much significance. It's a fun fight. They do play the Iron Man 3 theme for a moment, which is very nice. But yeah, Age of Ultron, it's not really a bad movie, but it's not great, and it doesn't give me the feelings that the other ones do. It's bland, it's kind of just, it just recycles a lot of the old jokes, really bland exposition, completely obvious setups. It's definitely the worst Avengers movie so far, but I love Hawkeye, he has a character arc, I love that final scene with Vision and Ultron, and the Hulkbuster fight is fun, so there's good stuff in here, but it's just not a great movie. So I'm gonna give, like, Age of Ultron, like, a B-, or, like, a C or a C+. I don't know. I can't really rate it. It's not great. It's one of the worst MCU movies, personally. But I understand that some people can get enjoyment out of it. So you guys let me know what you think of Avengers Age of Ultron if you've seen it, and what you thought of my review as well. And I hope you guys have a great day. Take care.